How did Terry Crews opening up about being sexually assaulted advance the #MeToo movement for victims of all genders and races? How does the Rihanna and Chris Brown assault scandal relate to Demi Lovato's own experience of sexual assault? And what horrible trauma was Demi dealing with behind the scenes in her Disney days? Hi, I'm Joy, and let's get into it. Just a quick warning, if you are easily triggered by subjects such as sexual assault or victim blaming, please proceed with caution. The #MeToo movement. As the conversation around sexual assault and harassment took center stage over recent years, the #MeToo movement has been picking up steam, with survivors of sexual assault coming forward across the world. In Hollywood, more and more celebrities have spoken out in support of survivors, with many publicly identifying as survivors themselves. Other celebrities instead got more attention for the act of victim shaming, in other words, claiming that survivors are in some way responsible for what they went through, which is absolutely, totally not true. Emma Watson, the one and only Hermione Granger, was first in line to let her fans know that she's there to support all victims of sexual harassment. "I stand with all the women who have been sexually harassed," she tweeted, "and am awestruck by their bravery. This mistreatment of women has to stop." Emma's comments came in later 2017, when a group of actresses came forward with allegations of harassment and assault against filmmaker Harvey Weinstein. Among the actresses were famous faces like Angelina Jolie, Cara Delevingne, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Kate Beckinsale.
The experience must make it clear that the safety of women, minorities, and anyone who may be vulnerable is a right, not a privilege.
Jennifer Lawrence, who had worked with Weinstein in the past, said in a statement that the abuse on innocent women is inexcusable and absolutely upsetting, especially when learning that Weinstein had been buying the silence of his victims for several decades. Jennifer went on to thank the women for their bravery in coming forward and said that her heart goes out to them. Of course, we tend to think that this type of problem only affects women, when that too is absolutely inaccurate. In wake of the accusations against Weinstein, Brooklyn Nine-Nine star Terry Crews also took to social media to share his own story of being harassed. Terry was at a party when a Hollywood executive groped him, and as much as he wanted to stand up for himself, he thought twice about how the media would portray the situation. Him being a 240-pound black man, having beaten up a big Hollywood honcho. While Terry did inform the executive's colleagues, and the man did end up apologizing, Terry never received any explanation as to why he did what he did, and Terry ended up staying quiet in order to advance his career. Without question, it's incredibly difficult to speak publicly as a sexual harassment survivor, as we see from Demi Lovato, who only now came out with her own story, despite being at the top of Hollywood for the past few years. But more on that in a second. For victims like Terry, who's not only a man but also belongs to a marginalized demographic, it proves even harder to find the necessary support. Men who go public often face challenges like medical providers, police officers, and judges not seeing them as victims. Especially those who are big and strong like Terry are often just told that they didn't fight back hard enough.
One thing I found is that, when you look at the facts, 1 in 6 men have been molested and have been abused or harassed. Yeah. So it's one of those things where you start to realize this is not a women's issue. It's a humanity issue.
By coming forward, Terry sent an important message to victims of sexual harassment across the world, especially those who may blame themselves or feel silenced, that they're not alone, nor was anything their fault.
I will not be shamed. I did nothing wrong. And you have to keep telling yourself that until you believe it. And I believed it.
Victim shaming in Hollywood. Unfortunately, not all celebrities were on the same page when it came to supporting the victims and their stories. That's where victim blaming comes in. Mayim Bialik, whom you might know from The Big Bang Theory, ruffled some feathers when she implied women who flirt, dress immodestly, or are conventionally beautiful are more prone to assault. As a proud feminist with little desire to diet, get plastic surgery, or hire a personal trainer, she said, "I have almost no personal experience with men asking me to meetings in their hotel rooms. I dress modestly. I don't act flirtatiously with men as a policy." She went on to say that in a perfect world, women should be free to act however they want, but we can't be naive about the culture we live in. Even though Mayim has the right to her own opinion, some people thought that by presenting herself as some sort of aspirational example of cautiousness, shifts responsibility onto the survivors.
I just feel like Mayim Bialik is very twisted. No one took her words out of context. You wrote this essay.
Right.
It wasn't an interview. We read your words and we took your words for what you said. That's what you meant.
Mayim did end up apologizing on Twitter and publicly acknowledged that no one is ever at fault for being sexually harassed or assaulted.
Book Live conversation with the Times' Barry Weiss, Mayim addressed the backlash.
I really do regret
that this became what it became, because literally I was trying to speak about a very specific experience I've had in a very specific industry. I was not looking to speak about assault and rape in general.
Mayim clarifies her comments. She did a Facebook Live this morning with the editor of her New York Times op-ed piece, an essay that had many people, including Nina Parker of our Plugged In panel, furious about Mayim's choice of words.
I just feel like Mayim Bialik is very twisted. No one took her words out of context. You wrote this essay.
Right.
It wasn't an interview. We read your words, and we took your words for what you said. That's what you meant.
Will you marry me?
The Big Bang Theory star has become an outspoken activist when it comes to issues close to her heart.
A lot of people say, oh, actors should just shut up and act.
How you dress and how you behave has nothing to do with you being assaulted. Assault and rape are acts of power. What I'm talking about specifically was the culture of Hollywood, the way that women are encouraged to present themselves, and the way that men encourage women to present themselves.
Another celebrity who was blasted on social media was talk show host Wendy Williams, when she commented about a young woman allegedly assaulted by the rapper Nelly. If she did not put herself in that situation, Wendy said, this wouldn't have happened. She also joked by telling the young lady to stay out of tour buses, which was not only perceived as inappropriate by fans, but also deeply unsympathetic. Wendy also ended up apologizing, but still warned women to be aware. Of course, like in Demi's case, it's sometimes difficult for us to understand that even the biggest of names can fall victim to assault. No matter how many fans you have or how much money and influence, it can happen to anyone. Even one of the current queens of music, Rihanna. Unless you've been living under a rock since 2017, you might have heard about the scandal that involves Chris Brown physically abusing Rihanna. Or more specifically, the way Chris managed to turn it all on Rihanna in his online documentary, Chris Brown, Welcome to My Life. In the documentary, he personally blamed Rihanna for the abuse he inflicted. He claimed that they'd been fighting after she saw texts from another woman. She was trying to grab my phone, he said, but I'm not giving her my phone to throw it out the window, so I bit her arm. Chris went on to say that from there, things just went downhill.
The winner is Chris Brown.
I just want to say thank all the fans. I love you with all my heart.
You're 23 years old. I mentioned you came out.
In the end, he did throw in a little comment about it not being okay, but that didn't exactly fly with his or Rihanna's fans. And when confronted by his victim blaming, Chris defended himself by saying that Rihanna hit him too, without actually acknowledging his own shortcomings. In the documentary, Chris even talks about the night which resulted in the infamous photo of Rihanna's beaten face, as well as the end of their relationship. Once again, he was sure to highlight Rihanna's fault in it all.
Like, I remember she tried to kick me. It's like just her just being upset. But then I really hit her. Like I with a closed fist, like I punched her, and it busted her lip.
He said that he did go into shock after hitting her, immediately regretting what he did, but then she spit blood in his face and he was even more enraged. Eventually, he let Rihanna drive home with a busted lip after he had pushed her head up against the window. Whether or not the abuse in their relationship really did come from both sides, one thing stays the same. Domestic abuse is never, ever justified, and the victim never deserves it, regardless of having angered the abuser.
I didn't cause this. I didn't do it. This happened to me, and it can happen to anybody.
If you think about it, relationships are supposed to be a safe space. You and your partner are supposed to protect each other, not be the cause of your pain. Unfortunately, as we've learned over the past week, one of Demi Lovato's earliest relationships caused her more pain than any of us could have imagined. Demi Lovato coming forward.
And anything that made her uncomfortable, she understood the power of that. And, most importantly, Demi's not telling anybody how to live their life. Everybody's got their own unique situations. She's simply telling you what she's been through, her unique journey.
In her new documentary, Demi Lovato, Dancing with the Devil, the pop sensation and former Disney star opened up about her heart-wrenching past. In the 4-part series, Demi discussed her struggle with addiction and her life-threatening overdose in 2018, about which she has been fairly open over the past few years. The thing that shocked most people was actually Demi coming forward about an ex-boyfriend sexually assaulting her when she was 15, something she's never talked about before.
I think some of the conversations about prior trauma in the earlier years of her life were really heavy. I wasn't sure when or if we were going to talk about those in the detail we did. And I remember that happening and feeling it was just a really intense moment.
Hello, I'm 7-year-old Demi Lovato.
So growing close with her, spending all this time, and seeing how much she was still on a journey while you were filming, did you worry about her during filming? Did you lay in bed at night wondering if you were going to get a call? Because it seems everybody around her who cared was at some point still very worried.
So yeah, there was some times where just heavy subject matter would stick with you and you would think about it and keep you up. And, you know, of course you worry a bit. But I really believe that today Demi is working on herself so much and really has gotten to the root of a lot of those things that she's in the best place she's been. But again, she's not fixed. We always talked about how it's very hard to wrap up a documentary and say, that's the end on a 28-year-old. She's 28 years old, so.
I lost my virginity in a rape, she says. I called that person back a month later and tried to make it right by being in control, and all it did was make me feel worse. The assault in question happened during Demi's Disney days, when she was starring in both Camp Rock and Sunny with a Chance.
Hello, I'm 7-year-old Demi Lovato.
When asked about it, Demi admits that she's never spoken up before, as it's taken her years to process the trauma and to understand exactly what happened to her. She said that she really beat herself up for years, which also made it hard for her to come to terms with the fact that she was not at fault. We were hooking up, Demi said, but I said, hey, this isn't going any further. I'm a virgin and I don't want to lose it this way. And that didn't matter to them. They did it anyways. At the time, Demi was part of the crowd of Disney stars who pledged to wait to have sex until marriage and wore purity rings, including the Jonas Brothers. In order to cope with the trauma and still having to interact with her abuser, Demi says the incident caused a downward spiral of disordered eating. Her bulimia got so bad that she started throwing up blood for the first time. As to why she's choosing to publicly come forward with her story now, Demi says she felt it was finally time to speak her truth. She says that through coming forward, she hopes others in the same position will see that it's not shameful and that everyone should be comfortable to admit that they've been mistreated in the past. Another reason Demi stayed quiet was her internal fear of victim blaming. She was a 15-year-old Disney star and she was supposed to be perfect. She was wearing a promise ring and she didn't want anyone to know she wasn't pure anymore, which was absolutely untrue. Demi doesn't reveal the identity of her abuser, but she does say that they never faced consequences for their actions, despite her having informed someone of the incident. They weren't taken out of the movie they were in, and no one ever spoke of it again. Demi went on to claim that she was also sexually assaulted by her drug dealer the night of her life-threatening overdose in 2018. She didn't just overdose, but she was taken advantage of. She said that when she was found after the incident, she was naked and blue. The dealer literally left her for dead.
I had 3 strokes. I had a heart attack. My doctors said that I had 5 to 10 more minutes.
Isn't that absolutely heartbreaking? Demi's new start. In her documentary, Demi reveals that she's no longer sober, but is using substances in moderation in a supervised setting.
The big reveal at the end is that Demi is not sober. She is drinking and smoking weed in moderation.
This is her truth. And she's not saying it's perfect. She's saying that she's figuring it out.
She also adds that she believes her bipolar disorder diagnosis was incorrect, and that after breaking off her engagement to Max Eric in September 2020, she's too queer to marry a man right now. Demi also ended up announcing a new album, her first since 2017, and explained that it follows her life over the past couple of years, especially how she began her journey and now starting over.
I'm not living my life for other people, or their headlines, or their Twitter comments. Bye!
Demi's story, while deeply upsetting, is proof of how victims of assault and harassment can rise up and reclaim her life. She was not at fault, and she shouldn't have been scared to speak up. No one should. Victim blaming needs to stop, and the sooner the world realizes that, the more people will be able to find the help and assistance that they need. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, visit rain.org or call 800-656-HOPE for information and resources that can help. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic, sexual, or family violence, call 1-800-RESPECT, 1-800-737-732. Thanks for watching.